Welcome to our Digging Deep on B Corp sessions. My name is Danielle Thompson, and these sessions were originally run as webinars exploring each of the pillars of the B Corp Impact Assessment. In these sessions, I interviewed an expert on each of the areas. I certainly learned a lot, and I hope you do too. In this session, we talked to Maxine Henry from Beyond Partners about the people pillar of B Corp. We explored what it takes to be an employer of choice and the practical things a company can implement to help make their employees feel valued and engaged. We also talked about how a good people experience translates to good business outcomes and how a business can truly understand what's important and therefore valued by their employees. Enjoy. So, as I said, today is all about the people pillar of B Corp, and I'm talking to Maxine Henry from Beyond Partners. So Maxine is an expert in all things people and employees. So she's going to be helping us today sort of navigate through this area. And the people area of B Corp is one I think a lot of companies really focus on because it's in their control. It's something that they often do a lot of work in anyway. And companies often find that they really want to invest in their people, and B Corp provides a way of sort of sharing what best practice looks like in that area. And especially for service-based businesses, this can be an area where you can really excel because people want to invest in their people because that's their kind of main asset. So Maxine, from Beyond Partners, who are an organisation who help ambitious businesses with their power of the people and their brand. And she's going to be talking to us today about all things people and employees and helping us navigate some of the best practice. So I guess, Maxine, the first sort of point is around that in B Corp specifically, it's all very much focused on having social and environmental purpose. And we talked 2 weeks ago with Sally around the power of purpose for customers. Mm-hmm. And how that can help you gain kind of customer loyalty. But how does that translate from a kind of people employee side, would you say?
I think it's really important to have a strong sense of purpose, and it doesn't really matter. Well, obviously it does matter if it's related to like sustainable or environmental issues. But the most important bit is it tells people who you employ, what you stand for. It tells them what's important to you and why you value it. I suppose if you can get that message right and make it really clear, it'll help attract people to your business as well. So your employee value proposition becomes that much stronger, and people will be approaching you to say, I really love that organisation. I love what they stand for and I want to be part of it. And I guess when you are able to sort of sell that narrative of what you stand for and why you stand for it, you'll employ people who are naturally attracted to those things as you. And when those values are aligned, the people that you employ take on that purpose as their own, because it sort of becomes a little bit of an ownership because they care about it so much. People, when you employ people, your employees want to know that they champion something that's a worthy cause and that's supporting something that they care about as well. Mm-hmm. And I suppose if you can get that narrative correct, it speaks to them on a deeper level. So something that's not superficial. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, they're going to get paid X amount of pounds for doing X job. But what you're looking for is that discretionary effort, which comes from engagement. Engagement, you can drive engagement in a number of different ways, but specifically through purpose. Telling that story about what it is that you're trying to solve and why you're trying to solve it. Tell that story correctly, and that's how you can create engagement and loyalty.
And do you think that so business purpose often, certainly historically, has been very much around, we want to grow, we want to be world beating or whatever it might be in those kind of words. But increasingly, and obviously B Corp kind of supports this way of thinking, it's much more about having a benefit to society or to environment or something wider than the business itself. And do you think employees appreciate that, or does it sometimes feel that actually, I'm here to do a job, so I'm here to do what I need to do? I
think I like to believe that yes, people do employ do think that. I mean, some people do just go to work and kind of do the job and go home again, and that's fine. And I think that those people shouldn't be ignored because they add a lot of value to your organisation. They're often a stable pair of hands that you can rely on, that you know that work will get done on a regular basis. I think, but most people, you know, when we're working with clients, we are naturally attracted to clients who are able to, who have a strong sense of purpose, that care about something that is wider than the bottom line, or how much dividends they're going to pay to their shareholders. And I've often found that if the focus is on the wider picture, of the wider purpose, then the bottom line increases anyway, because people care a little bit more, and people are wanting to work a little bit harder towards that purpose of creating their own. And I suppose a really great example of this was recently I seen in the media, Gymshark. So, you know, they've got a real clear purpose of what they stand for, what they're about. They're also talking about increasing mental health awareness. And I read this piece, and there was this girl who, I think she was based in America, but she really loved the brand, and she really loved the clothes and what they stood for. But the more that she loved the clothes and what the brand stood for, the more she was invested in them emotionally. And so she sort of followed them, and then, you know, bought more of their stuff, which is obviously great for them. Then she messaged them and said, you know, I really love what you stand for. I'd love to work for you. And they were like, oh, great, I'm recruiting, but thanks very much. And then that conversation continued. And this woman who had her own mental health issues, but because somebody within the organisation was able to tell that story about, you know, how exercise can support the growth of mental health. She reached out to them, she was interested in them, and now she spearheads the customer success team in America. Right. And there was no recruitment required. And now this woman is, you know, you Google her, I don't know what her name is, I'm sorry. But she heads up, and, you know, she heads up customer success for the US, for the brand of Gymshark. And, you know, this has been sort of, you know, it's a long period of time that they've been communicating with each other, but that just shows that they didn't need a fancy recruitment campaign. This person was attracted to them, and I said, she's doing amazing stuff for the company now.
Probably attracts better people because of that.
It does, yeah.
And get gravitated towards it. So what can companies do you think, in kind of a practical sense, in order to engage and connect employees with their purpose, whatever that might be?
What can they do to engage? Ask them. Ask them what they think about the purpose. I'm a big fan of it, and people do. There's the issue with asking people is that you ask them what their opinion is, and then you do absolutely zero with the response. And I think that's the worst thing that you can do. It's the biggest way to sort of turn people off at work, is ask them and go, actually, I've got all this information, I'm not going to do anything with it, or I'm going to sit on it for ages. And I know before the call we talked about employee engagement surveys specifically. And they're really great because what you can do is kind of create a benchmark. I'm working with a client at the moment, and they have an annual survey going out in a couple of 2 weeks now, I think it's going out. There's 300 questions in it. And I just think, what are you going to do with that data? Like, how are you going to distill that down into themes? You're asking all these people, it's going to take them about an hour to fill it out. They're going to get fatigue, like survey fatigue, filling it out. And then what are you going to do with it? And then because there's so much data that you're going to collect, it's going to take a month or two to kind of distill it down, create some themes, write a report, and then it's out of date because you've already lost a quarter trying to work out what the information says. And I think a great way of engaging people and getting people behind your purpose is, I'm a big fan of a pulse survey. You know, sort of 3 to 5 questions. You might send it out once a month, probably a bit too much, but certainly once a quarter, or, you know, every other month. And it's pick a topic, pick a theme, and ask questions on it. And then do a kind of, we asked you, you said, we did. focus on for a quarter maybe, or a period of time, which allows you to really embed the results of that survey, of that theme that you're asking, into the organisation.
So you could do, I guess, that, like, I don't know, you could pick employee health and wellness, or mental health, whatever, you know, pick a topic that you know is important to where you are quite now, or what's important to your employees, but just ask questions around that, and then kind of have a follow-up plan, if you like, around, okay, how are we going to respond to that? What are we going to do in order to respond to what we've heard? Rather than just cover everything, I guess, is that what you sort of mean?
Yeah, I think the thing is, you're in danger of it. And one of my ex-colleagues is on this call here today. And we've done this before in the past. We've worked together and we're like, oh God, there's loads of information. Like, what are we going to do with all this stuff? And it's like, as custodians of that information, you're almost overwhelmed by it. And you're like, there's too much for us to deal with. But pick one thing that everybody cares about. And it might be mental health. It might be financial wellness. It doesn't have to be something related, but it's something that speaks to every single one of your people in a way that they're interested in, that hits them not on a work level, but something that's a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
And then that's where you create drive and engagement. It doesn't have to be sort of, you know, do we need a new canteen, or shall we put the values up on the wall, or do we need to decorate, or, you know, the toilet block's a little bit rubbish, or something like that. Like, they're all good stuff to do, don't get me wrong. But, you know, people are coming out of the pandemic. And then the government this morning says, oh, by the way, you've got to wear face masks again. Like, that uncertainty with people of what we've just gone through, people are still dealing with that. So I suppose my advice to kind of create engagement is show that you care, ask those questions, listen to those answers, and then give a response based on it, and do something with it, like create action. And I was always a big fan of, go on, Karen. I was just going to say, I was always a big fan of, like, can you start with things that don't cost anything, like, as a business to provide, or that there's no initial cost. So there might be an investment, and it might be time off or something like that. But you become more creative in your solutions. And then once you start to draw, you know, you can sort of prove that there's a return on your investment. It's easier then to go to the board and say, can I have a big budget for X? Because we've done it, you know, we've done the, what's it called? The minimum viable product. Yeah. Oh, that's it. Prove it works. Now can I have some money, please? Yes. And then that's a long answer.
And how do you, and I guess kind of related to that is, and you kind of touched on it then, around this kind of, you ask the questions or find out that information, and then you act on it, and you then report back and say, this is what we did. Are they, and I know companies are a big fan of kind of KPIs and all that, but how can people, or how can companies make sure that it's not a done and forget kind of process? They just kind of throw the questions out there and then move on to something else.
I mean, it's tricky. Let's not pretend that it's not. It's tricky, and people get measured. You know, if you measure something, it gets improved, or it doesn't. But it's monitored because people have KPIs and ORKs and all the other stuff. But I think if you can measure it in a different way, create ambassadors in your organisation, for example, celebrate the success of the achievements that you've done, then you're not monitoring it on a KPI, so there's some kind of financial return. Because I think when you're dealing with people, unless you're, and again, my ex-colleague and I, we still work with the same person, or we used to work with the same person. He loves data. He loves financial return, everything spreadsheets. He loves. So if you want some budget, you go to him with a spreadsheet and a forecast. And unless you're specifically him, engage with your people in a way that's human, in a way that is kind of accessible to everybody. So speak to them at that level, go to them at their pain point, and if you can devolve that responsibility to the people that you're actively trying to make their lives better, then again, it'll go back to your purpose of what your company's trying to do in the first place, and then create that ownership so that they care about it as well as you care about it. I'm a big fan of ambassadors.
Yeah, I quite like that idea of having people that are sort of across the organisation, within the organisation, rather than it just coming top down, but it's across the organisation where people have a level of responsibility to drive this and make sure they know what's going on and report back and feedback in terms of what actions have been taken, and really kind of be embedded across the team rather than just being sort of top down.
Yeah, and I said it earlier, but celebrate those success, and even if it's just a small, minute, it'll create momentum of what you're trying to achieve. It doesn't have to be like stand up in a round of applause. But people can be creative and go back to, we haven't got any money to throw at this, how are we going to celebrate success? Because it's more meaningful, it's more thought about, it shows that you care, and you get a bit more creative in your solutions. And then I think go on. Oh, it's just, I had thought of an example. So I was reading the other day about like this debt collector in America. And you're like, well, that's a tricky job to sell, isn't it? Like, but their thing was to create better financial health for their clients. So what their employees were measured on was the number of thank you cards they received.
For a debt collector?
Yeah, so if you're employed as a debt collector, honestly, no word of a lie. And they were measured on the number of thank you cards that they received. So it wasn't a case of knocking on your door and say, by the way, you owe us this amount of money. It was knocking on the door and going, I understand you're in a difficult situation. What is it can I do to help you?
Wow. That completely changes the whole conversation.
Yeah. The narrative is completely changed. You've switched it up. And 9 times out of 10, like that debt is repaid quicker, and people are in a strong financial position on the outset, and they're still in their homes, they haven't lost their TV, they haven't lost their car. So that's how they're measured, on the number of thank you cards that they get. And I really love that.
Yeah, that's a great example, and just shows the kind of power of that changing that narrative and looking at things slightly differently.
Yeah, and it's one of the most profitable debt collectors in the US as well. So nice.
And then I think we've seen, and I think there's a kind of a lot of people talk about the kind of the big cultures and the good cultures around having funky offices and table tennis and free food and all this sort of stuff. But often that's not appropriate, or is out of reach for a lot of companies. So what are the kind of benefits that you would expect a kind of B Corp level employer to be offering their employees?
I think ask them what they want. It goes back to, we're all different. We all have different requirements outside of doing the job. And I truly believe that people come to work, they want to know that they're doing a good job, and then want to go home again. So ask them what they want. It's easy for big organisations to have almost like a shopping list of benefits. And is there a perk box? And do you get eye care vouchers? And do you get, subsidised gym memberships? And, all that stuff is great. But it goes back, like, think of what you can do for free. Or can you give people time off to do something outside of work that you're willing to support them to achieve? Can they volunteer? Can you do something as an organisation to volunteer in, like in a children's charity? Or I worked for an organisation, and it was a big global company. We had, about 500 people worldwide. For one day a year, we shut the whole organisation down for a 24-hour period. We all volunteered our time on the same day through different time zones as a company doing certain things. So me and my team, we went and cleaned Jesmond Dean Park and Little Pickett. There's a company in New York. They delivered meals to to homeless people and supported in that way. And it was a way of creating a community within the organisation, because we all cared about something like that. Yeah. So ask people what they want as a sort of benefit. And, unlimited holidays are great, but it doesn't, some people think, oh, well, I can't take a day off because it's not my entitlement, and, oh, I'm a bit frightened to. I've seen it where people have tried to use the unlimited holiday entitlement and they actually take less than the standard is allowed because they almost feel like they don't deserve it.
Yeah.
So, create a normal holiday entitlement but then give people mandatory 2 days every day. You get your birthday off, that's not that's not part of your annual entitlement. You get Christmas off, that's not part of your annual entitlement. And then all of a sudden you've got all these days off that people are allowed to take, but then it doesn't come out of their annual entitlements. You might only have contractually 20 days holiday that you're going to pay for as an organisation. And then it's up to people to flex that. So you can be pretty creative on some things.
Yeah, I think that's it, because I think there's a lot of, like I say, I think people focus on the tangible things that people can see, like the funky offices and like the beanbags in the creative room or whatever it might be, but it's much wider and much more much deeper than that in order for people to feel valued. A big part of B Corp is around mental health awareness and financial security, and making sure that people are, physically okay and they're connected and engaged with their company, but also that they're mentally well and they're supported, much more widely than just kind of doing the job. So what are the kind of things that employers can do to make sure that their employees are supported from a kind of mental health and financial security point of view?
I think what you need to do first, and I always encourage people, is create that space in a safe way to share those concerns. People aren't going to email you and go, by the way, I'm struggling today, can I have some help? That's not going to happen. There's a lot of shame around financial insecurity. There's a lot of shame still, unfortunately, around poor mental health or mental wellness. And I think Sanctus do a really good job. And if you don't, follow them on LinkedIn. Sanctus.
Right.
There's a lot of information that they share quite freely. They're a coaching company that's there to support people. But sort of make that space for people to come to you with concerns. And I think as leaders, it's really important. It's your responsibility to change that narrative. So you're going to have to open yourself up and be vulnerable in the first place, and make it safe for other people to come forward and go, I'm vulnerable too. I'm really struggling. I've got this going on. Can I have some help? And you're going to need your leaders to create those examples. So you don't have to bare your soul. It's not about that, but it's about changing the narrative within your organisation that it's safe for people to share that information and be vulnerable, and that they're going to be okay, because the organisation is not going to use that as a way to get rid of somebody or manage them out of the business. It's a way to go, actually, I see you struggling, I see you, and I'm going to help you. And to support that, once you've got that, employee assistance program is a really great way to start, because as a leadership team, it takes that kind of, somebody's come to me, I don't really know what to do, how do I signpost them? Employee assistance programs are a really great way to signpost people to professionals who can help them. Like I say, full of Sanctus. And they're a really great example of some good stuff that you can do. There's another online tool called Flourish as well, which is like a mental health survey that you can do. I think there's a payment to it. I don't know. I've just come across it. But the report, once your people have filled it out, the report spits out, gives you the key themes and then some suggestible actions on the back of those themes of improvements you can make. So that's probably a really great place to start.
So I think that's it. I think especially, and we were talking earlier about B Corp kind of sort of takes a good employer and sort of kind of almost forces you to go up a level. And this is definitely a place where it is going up a level, because it really is looking at people much more holistically than just how they turn up at work. It is looking at their mental health in a much more kind of wider sense. It also talks a lot about kind of physical health and encouraging health initiatives, that kind of thing. So But that's a kind of difference, I think, between your kind of good employer who's doing a lot of good work and somebody who's really kind of going that extra level, is really sort of taking kind of mental health and security seriously.
Yeah.
So stuff like that is really helpful for employers to know kind of how to do that. Because it's a hard topic. It's a hard tackle.
It is, and there's no easy way to deal with this. It is difficult. But if you hold your hands up to people and say, look, we know this is a difficult topic, we know it's sensitive, and we're gonna figure a way out together. Mm-hmm. You co-create in that space with them, and then you create an engagement. And if you make a mistake, that's fine. Just hold your hands up and say, I'm really sorry I made that mistake, and what I've learned is this, and it won't happen again. Because that's the bit, like, people can make mistakes, and I see it all the time, but it's like, what do you do? How have you learned? How can you grow with what you've learned from that experience?
And then another part of this whole section is around training development and making sure that employees are invested in and that they sort of go through meaningful sort of training and development process or opportunities. So again, from a kind of employer point of view, what are the sort of, how do they start? What's the best place to start in terms of identifying and prioritising the investment in training they should be making?
Yeah. I mean, this is going to sound really old school and not revolutionary at all. But analysis, like a plain and simple skills gap analysis. Where do you want your business to be in 5 years' time, and who's going to get you there? What skills do you need those people to do? And then who have you got in your business in comparison to what you need in 5 years' time? And then you can go, right, okay, so who are our next level leaders? Like, so we've got a C-suite, or we've got the leadership team. Next down, what is the level underneath that look like? Who is filling those gaps? Ask yourself, if your customer success manager quits tomorrow, who's going to replace them? Are there any high risk jobs in your organization, and what protection does that role need? Not the person, but the role. Because what you don't want to do is make people stay in your organization if they don't want to be there. So you'll never ever see me say to somebody, if they hand me a notice, and you'll never see me say, do you want to reconsider? Well, thank you very much. I really value your time that you spent with us. What can we do to support your next stage? Yeah. Because they've made that decision. I'm not going to say, can I give you a pay rise and will you stay? Because that's not why they're leaving. And then, like, look at your turnover of people. Like, is there a trend of why people are leaving their organisation? And then once you've got your data, decide where you want to spend your money. Because when times are tight, training budgets are the first things to go. But unfortunately, like, they're the things that can make the biggest impact of organisations. So decide where your high risk is in your organisation, and then focus your money on that. So that would be my place to start. There's another great tool online called Learnably. Right. And you can give individual training budgets in there. And so if you can, so you've identified, like, where's the business that you need to do, and like, okay, we're going to go down this route. Learnably's, it has two arms to it, I think, and I've used it in the past through another organisation. So you give people individual training allowances, right? There's £250. You can spend that on upskilling in any specific way that you want to. Or you can say to people, here's £250. I want you to use this in order to achieve X as part of your annual objectives of what you're going to achieve. Yeah, and then they take ownership of their own learning. So you're not forcing somebody to do a course, because we've all done that. We've all gone to a course. God, I don't want to be here. I haven't got enough time. Blah blah. But if you push that ownership back to them and go, right, okay, it's your responsibility. I'm measuring you on the outcome of this. How you do that is up to you. We're all adults. Like. You allow people to be adults at work, make their own decisions within, give people frameworks of what they can do, and then allow them to do it as well. But understand the data first, and then work out where to spend your money.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point around, again, sort of that difference between a good employer who invests in their employees and you know, puts on training and offers that opportunity, versus that kind of next level, which is, we trust you, you're adults, we've got a framework that we want to help you through, and we're going to provide you the opportunity, but how you get there is down to you, and here's some, you know, options that you can utilize or not, but it's the opportunity is there for you to take if that's something you want to invest in yourself in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are adults, remember, they've got to this level in their lives, like they've bought houses, they've learned to drive, a lot of them are parents, like, trust that they're able to do it.
Yeah. And so another big part of B Corp, especially in the people area, probably more than the rest, is around policies and processes and employee handbooks. And it specifically talks around having various policies in place, which is all good, and that's fine. But again, what can employers do to make sure that, yes, they've got, you know, a pile of policies over here, but to make sure that they're actually implemented and people live and breathe them in the organisation?
I think, well, I don't like a handbook. I mean, spit out there, but I don't like a handbook. A lot of them are long, a lot of them boring. There's like you rock up there on your first day and you're like, and here's the policy, and yes, paper like that, and you're like, oh, that's a tree. Like, come on, what am I going to do with that? It's a lot of data, it's a lot of information, and then you very rarely read it because you're kind of working out like who these people are. Should I have lunch with you? Like, you've got all this new stuff going on. Can you take the headlines out of it? Can you create a culture book that says, welcome to our organisation, like, we're really pleased that you're here. So I wrote a culture book for a client of mine, and they work in the mental health space, and he was like, Maxine, I don't know where to start, I don't know what I'm doing, like, I know you do, so like, I'm just going to let you do it. And I was like, are you brave? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, do you trust me? Absolutely. And I was like, right, I'm going to do away with the handbook. And he was like, yeah. I was like, trust me. So I produced this 10-slide culture deck, and it was welcoming people into the organisation. It was like, this is what we do around here. This is how we interact. This is the type of people we are. This is our values, and these are the behaviours that we display in our organisation. This is what it means to be a leader, like, in our organisation, and this is how our leaders show up. This is how our people show up. This is the stuff that's acceptable, and this is the stuff that's not acceptable. And then what we did further on was said, these are the key policies and procedures. And it was really like a kind of disciplining procedure. Like, we know that mistakes happen. If you admit them, that's fine. If you don't, then we're going to tell you off. And it was a bit like that. It was sort of like, this is the acceptable behaviour around that's in the office. And it included things like, you know, don't eat other people's food in the fridge, and like fun stuff that people are like, oh yeah, I get that, because like somebody's always had their sandwich eaten or something like that. Because you get that, don't you? Like, who's eating sandwiches? Like, come on, that's not on. Create that fun and engagement piece in the early stages when you're onboarding people. Make it interactive, make it fun, make it engaging. You know, nobody wants to sit and read a policy that says, if you do this, this will happen. If you do this, this will happen. Yes, there's an absolute place for them, and use your culture book to sign people back to them. And I wrote, we had here's a list of the policies and procedures that we have. They're there ready for when you want to read them. Mm-hmm. But until you're ready, here's the highlights. Here's the good stuff. And focus on creating that positive attitude of being in the organisation, and all the good stuff that you do. Because when people are like, and even me, I mean, I built a career on writing policies and procedures. Like, it's still, I'm like, oh God, more procedures. And they tie you up in knots, and you're like, oh, well, if I'm going to do this, then I can't do that because the policy says. But if you can make it a little bit freer.
I really like that idea of that kind of culture book and a way of sort of something sitting, because like you say, especially from a B Corp point of view, but also for all sorts of other reasons, the policies need to be there, they need to exist. but they don't have to be handed over to employees to read on day one, and having that much more culturally aligned piece that sits across it that can signpost the other stuff, but really kind of brings to life what's important, will help employees to kind of get on board faster as well.
Yeah, and I think there's some great software out there that really supports that journey. So you could have as part of your onboarding program, and again, onboarding is like a whole other topic that we could talk about, but you could have at the end of 6 months, like, I need you to have read and understood like all of these policies and procedures in your own time. We know if you've got quiet time, build it into your onboarding procedure over the first 6 months. And then there's software out there that says, you know, employee X has read and downloaded and ticked to say, yes, I've read and understood this policy. So you know that the information is getting across, but you're delivering it at a time and a place where they're ready to receive that information as well. Because that's the bit. Like, if they're not ready to hear what you're trying to tell them, then they're not going to listen. So give it to them when they're ready to hear it. Yeah.
And I think, like, say, there's giving the people highlights and really sort of setting that scene early on means that people can get on board faster, that they're much more connected and much more engaged, but you're still kind of working through some of the technicalities that you've got to cover, but in a more kind of manageable way than. And I guess, so we talked a lot about employers and what employers can do, but what do you think, what's the role that employees take in making sure that they kind of fully immerse themselves in their company's social environmental purpose? Because I think some people will just want to come in, do the job, go home, and sort of this whole world might feel a bit of a fad, I suppose, in some cases. So how do you make sure that, what role do employees play in making all this work?
I mean, that's a really great question, because we can do all this stuff, but if your people aren't engaged, then, you know, it's not going to make a difference. So I suppose for me, go back to your purpose. Like, what is it that your business is trying to achieve? Can you co-create that purpose with your people? So you might have like a broad idea, but can you get their involvement in it? So that, you know, when you're saying, my company, I don't know, reduces the number of flip-flops in the ocean. I know that's an actual purpose of somebody. They create yoga blocks, by the way. I love them. Go back to the Sally's video. Anyway, but that was co-created. You know, people care about something like that. So go back to the purpose. Make sure that it's personally aligned with what they're trying to do as a human, and then it doesn't feel like another fad or a management craze or something like that. They will champion that cause because they feel like they own it and they're engaged, and they'll feel like it's their cause and their purpose too.
Yeah, so this is really going back to that kind of first piece around purpose and making sure that it's across the whole organisation.
Yeah, it sort of underpins everything people related.
And so, sort of coming to the end now, but I suppose finally, can you just share sort of what your sort of top tips or sort of summary of the sort of things that a kind of modern progressive employer should be thinking about in this space?
Yeah, I mean, when you first asked me this question, I was like, oh, I don't know if I've got any answers. I'm not sure. I would say for me, like, the change is here and it's here to stay. So get on board with it. Accept it. Accept flexible working is a thing now. Accept people want the flexibility to come into the office and go home again. Like, it's here to stay, you know, and part of your value proposition is that you kind of get on board with that and you make that as strong as possible, because then you'll, you know, allow people to kind of come to your organisation. People are tired. People are worn out. Like, the last 2 years, I mean, we were talking just before, like, it's 3 weeks till Christmas and the pair of us are absolutely shattered. So allow people to kind of rest, recuperate a little bit. Like, work out what flexible options work for your people. And I think I said it earlier, but ask them what they want. And then it's an opportunity to give them that. And there might not be. But then tell them that it's not, and these are the reasons why. People understand that, and help people with with creating their own boundaries as well about their time, you know, as we work from home more often, you know, and it's really easy when you go into the office because you're in that space in the office. But when you're in the house, it's easy to go, oh, well, I've got my emails on my phone, so I'm just going to quickly do this, and I'm just going to do this. And those lines become really, really blurred if your working space is your home space as well. So help people create those boundaries about how and why they can, where and when, I suppose, they can work and how they can work. And I read on social a couple of days ago, this company now has, you can raise a white flag, and that white flag is like, it says to everybody, I'm having a bit of a shit day. So, sorry, I'm terrible potty mouth. I'm having a shit day, so just kind of bear with me while I'm slow and I'm just probably not on my A game today. And I really love that. I really, really love that. And then I also read recently as well that Home Bargains, Aldi and Co-op are giving all their staff like extra free paid time off over Christmas just to recognise all the hard work that they've done over the last 2 years. And I really love that. It's like, thank you very much. Like, take some time. So.
No, that's really, and I think the message across all of this really is to think about people as individuals, to talk to them, to listen to what they've got to say, to bring them into the conversation. Because if you do that, whatever we're talking about, whether it's training, whether it's purpose, whether it's benefits, that you will get to a better end result because of that, and your people will feel much more part of it because you've involved them in that process. So I think that's the key message that I've kind of picked up from all of this is, yes, all the stuff we've talked about in B Corp, the stuff we need to kind of tick the boxes there, but ultimately it's about bringing your people in, talking to them, listening and reacting to what they've got to say. And as long as you do that, you really can't go massively far wrong.
Yeah.
Amazing.